Hello, I'm Jacob, and as a part of Operation YouTube by the Rigatoni Pasta Bots, I'm going to be giving y'all a brief introduction to gravity, aimed for about advanced elementary kids to junior high kids. So first off, what is gravity? Gravity is a force that all objects exert on each other. And a force is anything that influences the motion of an object. So, you pushing a door closed, that's a force. Pulling a door open is a force. There's lots of forces. Moving my hands is a force. Rotating in my chair is a force. Lots of forces happen all the time. And the guy on this slide, his name is Sir Isaac Newton. He was a very smart man back in the 1600s who is accredited with the discovery of gravity. So, the story goes that he was sitting under an apple tree near his house, and an apple fell on his head, and he thought about it for a while. He was like, why does that happen? Why does everything fall downwards? And he eventually came up with the conclusion that there had to be a reason, and that reason was gravity. So, where does gravity happen? Gravity is present everywhere in the universe. An object with mass exerts a gravitational force on any object with mass. So, I have mass, you have mass. Mass is basically how much you weigh. It's a little more complicated than that, but for now, that's what we're going to stick with. Anything that weighs something exerts a gravitational force. So, I exert a gravitational force on anything else around me. Earth exerts a gravitational force. My hat exerts a gravitational force. But the reason we don't feel these forces, except for the Earth, is because gravitational force strengthens with an object of greater mass compared to a smaller mass object. So I exert much less of a gravitational force than, let's say, the Empire State Building, because the Empire State Building weighs so much more than me. Its gravitational force is also greater when you're closer to that object. So right now, this ball probably has more gravitational force on it from me than something another continent away. So, gravitational force is dependent on mass and distance from objects. It's very important. So, what's the biggest force on us and everything around us? It's the Earth. Because of its large mass and close distance, it is the most gravitational force that's present on us and everything around us. Some other examples of some important gravitational forces is Jupiter. Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system by mass and size. Because of this, if you were to somehow stand on Jupiter, even though it's a gas giant, it's a gas planet, so you can't really stand on it, but if you were to stand on it, you would experience 2.4 times more downward force than on Earth. That means you'd feel 2.4 times heavier. And what do I mean by downward force? So the reason everything falls downward on Earth, like this ball, or like Newton's apple, is because of Earth's gravitational pull. Every gravitational force acts towards the greater gravitational force center of mass. Center of mass of Earth is in the center of, Earth is a little sphere. Center of the sphere is the center of the Earth. So, if you're jumping, you're going to be pushed downward toward the center of the Earth. But since the ground is there to stop you, luckily, you won't fall all that way. A question you might have is, oh, but there's some satellites in orbit around Earth. How does that work? Why don't they fall back to Earth? That's a good question. So basically, let's first backtrack for a second. If you've ever heard the expression 0G, is what you would use to describe weightlessness whenever you're in orbit. I'm sure, hopefully you've seen some movies or some cartoons or some TV shows of people in space and they're floating around, having a good time. Zero G is a term you might have heard before to describe a floating object. but it's not really that accurate. Satellites and astronauts are subject to nearly the same amount of gravitational force as we are, but they don't fall and hit the ground like we do. Why is that? The reason satellites and other objects in orbit don't fall back to Earth is because of their speed. So, what do I mean by that? So, as they're orbiting the Earth, so they're going around in a circle around Earth. So, they're still falling. So they're falling towards the center of the Earth, but they never end up hitting the Earth because of Earth's curve. So by the time they would eventually come back to Earth, the Earth is curved away from them. So they keep going and going and going around. So that was a brief introduction to gravity. I hope you learned something today, and I hope maybe you got a little interested in gravity. There are going to be some other videos on this channel. Go check them out. Some interesting topics about some things you might want to learn, some STEM topics. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So if you're interested in any of that, check out the other videos on this channel, and have a good day.